Jack Morrison pulled his coat tighter around his body. The cold winter wind cut through him like a knife. Snow fell heavy from the dark sky above. His horse walked slowly through the deep snow on the ground. Each step made a soft crunching sound. It was late at night. Jack could not see much in the darkness. Only the white snow showed him the way home. He had been away for 2 long months. 2 months of driving cattle across 3 different states. 2 months of sleeping under the stars and eating beans from a can. 2 months of missing his family. The week. Cattle drive should have taken another week, but a big storm came early. The other cowboys said it was too dangerous to keep going. The boss man told everyone to go home. Jack was happy about this. He could go home to his wife and 3 sons a whole week early. What a nice surprise it would be for them. Jack thought about his boys as his horse moved through the snow. Tommy was 12 years old now. He was the oldest and always tried to act like a grown man. Tommy helped Jack with work around the ranch. He was getting tall and strong. Billy was 9 years old. He was full of energy and always getting into trouble. But he was a good boy with a kind heart. Little Sam was only 6 years old. He was the baby of the family. Sam had big blue eyes and always asked lots of questions. The boys had lost their real mother 3 years ago. She died from a bad sickness. Jack was very sad and did not know how to take care of 3 young boys by himself. He worked hard on the ranch every day. The boys needed a mother to love them and take care of them when Jack was working. 2 years ago, Jack met Clara in town. She was a pretty woman with dark hair and a nice smile. She was kind to the boys when she met them. Clara told Jack she would love to be a mother to his children. She said she always wanted a family. Jack thought Clara was a good woman. He thought she would make his boys happy. Jack and Clara got married on a warm spring day. The boys seemed to like their new stepmother. Clara cooked good meals for them. She bought them new clothes. She helped them with their reading and writing. Jack was happy. His family was complete again. But now Jack was worried. He had sent Clara letters during the cattle drive. Her letters back to him were very short. She did not write much about the boys. When Jack asked about Tommy, Billy, and Sam, Clara would only say they were fine. She never told him what they were doing or how they were feeling. The last letter Jack got from Clara was strange. She wrote that the boys were being difficult. She said they did not listen to her. She said they made too much trouble. This did not sound like his sons. They were good boys. They had never caused big problems before. Jack's neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, had also sent him a letter. She was an old woman who lived on the ranch next to Jack's place. Mrs. Peterson wrote that she had not seen the boys playing outside for many days. She said Clara's buggy was gone from the ranch a lot. Mrs. Peterson was worried about the children. This letter made Jack very upset. Why were his boys not playing outside? Where was Clara going all the time? Who was watching his sons when she was gone? Jack wanted to come home right away. But the cattle drive was not finished yet. He had to stay and do his job. Now the storm had ended the cattle drive early. Jack could go home and see what was happening with his family. He hoped Mrs. Peterson was wrong. He hoped Clara was taking good care of his boys. But something in his heart told him there was trouble. Jack's horse was getting tired. They had been riding for many hours. The snow was deep and hard to walk through. But Jack did not want to stop and rest. He wanted to get home as fast as possible. He wanted to hug his sons and kiss their faces. He wanted to sit by the warm fire and tell them stories about the cattle drive. The wind blew harder. Jack could barely see in front of him. But he knew the way home. He had ridden this path many times before. His ranch was just a few more miles away. Soon he would be there. Jack thought about the surprise on his family's faces when he walked through the door. Clara would be shocked to see him home so early. The boys would run to him and jump into his arms. Little Sam would ask 100 questions about the cattle and the other cowboys. Tommy would want to hear about the adventure. Billy would laugh and dance around the room. Jack smiled thinking about this happy scene. His family would be so excited. They would all sit together and talk late into the night. Jack would tell them about the long journey and the big storm. Clara would make hot coffee and warm bread. The boys would fall asleep by the fire. safe and happy with their father home again. The snow started to fall lighter now. Jack could see a little better. In the distance, he saw a few lights from the town of Silver Creek. His ranch was just past the town, not much further to go now. Jack's horse seemed to know they were almost home. The animal walked a little faster through the snow. Jack patted the horse's neck and spoke softly to him. This was a good horse. He had carried Jack many miles during the cattle drive. Soon the horse would be in the warm barn with plenty of food and water. As they got closer to town, Jack saw that most houses were dark. It was very late at night. Most people were sleeping in their beds. Only a few windows still had light from candles or oil lamps. The town looked peaceful and quiet under the white snow. Jack rode past the town and toward his ranch. His heart beat faster with excitement. He was almost home, almost back to his family. The long, cold journey was nearly over. But as Jack got closer to his house, he started to feel worried again. Something did not look right. The house should have some light in the windows. There should be smoke coming from the chimney. Even late at night, the fire should still be burning to keep the house warm. Jack's horse walked into the yard in front of the house. Jack stopped and looked around. Everything was very quiet. Too quiet. Where was everyone? Why was the house so dark and cold? Jack got down from his horse and walked toward the front door. His boots made deep holes in the snow. He called out to his family, but no one answered. The only sound was the wind blowing through the trees. Something was very wrong. Jack could feel it in his bones. This was not the happy homecoming he had been dreaming about. This was the beginning of something terrible. Jack stood in front of his house and stared at the dark windows. No light came from inside. No warm glow welcomed him home. The house looked empty and cold, like no one lived there at all. He walked up the wooden steps to the front door. The steps were covered with snow. No one had walked on them for days. Jack's boots made the first marks in the white powder. This was strange. Where was his family? Jack knocked on the door 3 times. The sound was loud in the quiet night. He waited and listened. No footsteps came from inside. No voices called out to him. The house stayed silent. "Clara!" Jack called out. "Boys, I'm home!" Still no answer. Jack felt his heart start to beat faster. Something was very wrong here. Even if they were all sleeping, someone should hear him calling. Tommy was a light sleeper. He always woke up. When Jack came home late from work, Jack tried to turn the door handle. The door was locked. This was also strange. Jack's family never locked the door when they were home. They only locked it when they went away to town or to visit neighbors. Jack walked around to the back of the house. Maybe the back door was open. His boots sank deep into the snow with each step. The snow came up to his knees. It was hard to walk, but Jack pushed forward. The back door was also locked. Jack looked through the kitchen window. It was too dark inside to see anything. He cupped his hands around his eyes and pressed his face against the cold glass. Still nothing. Just darkness. Jack went to the barn to put his horse away. Maybe Clara and the boys were in the barn doing evening chores. But when he opened the barn doors, only his own animals looked back at him. The cows and the horses were there, but no people. Clara's fancy buggy sat in the corner of the barn. Jack walked over to look at it. The buggy was dry. It had not been used in the snow today, so Clara had not gone to town. She should be home. But where was she? Jack took care of his tired horse. He gave the animal food and water. He rubbed the horse down with an old blanket. All the time, Jack kept thinking about his missing family. Where could they be? Maybe they went to visit neighbors, Jack thought. Maybe they were at Mrs. Peterson's house next door. Or maybe they went to town to buy supplies. But why would they go out in such bad weather? And why so late at night? Jack walked back to the house. He had to get inside and look for clues. He found an old key hidden under a flower pot by the back door. Clara did not know about this key. Jack had put it there years ago in case of emergencies. The key turned in the lock with a small click. Jack opened the back door and stepped inside. The house was very cold inside, as cold as it was outside. The fire in the fireplace had been out for a long time. Jack lit a match and found an oil lamp on the kitchen table. The light from the lamp made shadows dance on the walls. Jack held the lamp high and looked around the kitchen. Dirty dishes sat in the sink. They looked like they had been there for days. Flies buzzed around them. The smell was bad. Clara always kept the kitchen clean. She would never leave dirty dishes like this. Jack walked through the house with the lamp. In the living room, he saw that newspapers were scattered on the floor. A chair was turned over on its side. It looked like someone had left in a hurry. Jack went upstairs to check the bedrooms. His own bedroom was empty. The bed was not made. Clara's clothes were still in the closet, but some of them were missing. Her best dress was gone. So was her good coat and hat. Jack's heart was beating very fast now. He went to check the boys' rooms. Tommy and Billy shared one room. Little Sam had his own small room next door. The boys' rooms were a mess. Clothes were thrown everywhere. Toys were scattered on the floor. The beds had not been made. It looked like the boys had been gone for many days, but where were they and where was Clara? Jack went back downstairs. He walked through every room again looking for some sign of what had happened. In Clara's sewing room, he found something that made him stop. On Clara's writing desk was a letter. The letter was not finished. It was in Clara's handwriting. Jack held the lamp close and read what she had written. "My dear sister," the letter began. "I cannot stand these children any longer. They are wild and difficult. They do not listen to me. They make noise all day long. I think I made a mistake marrying Jack. I do not want to be a mother to his boys." The letter stopped there. Clara had not finished writing it, but Jack had read enough. His hands shook as he held the paper. Clara did not love his sons. She did not want to be their mother anymore. Jack sat down in Clara's chair and tried to think. If Clara did not want to be around the boys, where would she take them? Maybe she sent them to stay with relatives. Maybe she took them to an orphanage in the city. But that did not make sense either. Jack was their father. Clara could not just send them away without asking him. And besides, the boys had no other relatives. Jack's parents were dead. His wife's parents were also dead. Jack walked back to the kitchen. He opened the pantry to look for food. Most of the shelves were empty. The bread was old and moldy. The milk had gone sour. It looked like no one had bought food for the house in a long time. This was very strange. Clara always kept the pantry full of food. She liked to cook big meals. She was proud of feeding the family well. Why would she let the food run out? Jack sat down at the kitchen table and put his head in his hands. He was very tired from the long ride home. He was cold and hungry. But most of all, he was scared. Where was his family? What had happened to his 3 little boys? Maybe Clara had taken the boys and run away. Maybe she decided she did not want to be married to Jack anymore. Maybe she was on a train right now, going far away with Tommy, Billy, and Sam. But if that was true, why was her buggy still in the barn? And why were some of her clothes still in the closet? If Clara was running away for good, she would take everything with her. Jack stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the snow was still falling. The wind was still blowing hard. It was a terrible night to be out in the cold. If his boys were outside somewhere, they could be in great danger. Jack made a decision. He would search everywhere for his family. He would look in every building on his ranch. He would check every place they might be hiding or trapped. He would not rest until he found his sons. Jack put on his heaviest coat and boots. He took the oil lamp and went back outside into the storm. The wind tried to blow out the lamp flame, but Jack protected it with his hand. First, Jack searched all the other buildings on his ranch. He looked in the chicken coop. He looked in the tool shed. He looked in the old barn where he kept hay for the animals. Every building was empty. Jack walked around the outside of his house, calling his sons' names. "Tommy, Billy, Sam," he shouted into the wind. But only the echo of his own voice came back to him. Where could they be? Jack was getting desperate. His boys were somewhere out in this cold night. They needed their father to find them. They needed help. Jack decided to check one more place. Behind the house was a small storage building he had built years ago. He used it to keep tools and feed for the animals. It was not a place people would normally go, but as Jack walked toward the little building, he heard something that made him stop. It was very quiet, but Jack was sure he heard it. It sounded like crying. It sounded like children crying. Jack stopped walking and listened very carefully. The wind was loud, but he was sure he heard something else. It sounded like small voices. It sounded like children crying. The sound was coming from the small storage building behind his house. Jack had built this little building 5 years ago. He kept tools inside it, old farming equipment, bags of feed for the animals. It had no windows, just a heavy wooden door with a strong lock. Jack walked quickly toward the building. The snow was deep around it. No one had walked here for many days. But as Jack got closer, he could hear the sounds more clearly. Someone was inside the building. Someone was crying and making small, scared noises. Jack's heart began to beat very fast. Could his boys be in there? But why would they be in the storage building? And why was the door locked? Jack reached the building and put his ear against the wooden door. The sounds were louder now. He could hear children's voices. They were crying and talking in whispers. They sounded scared and cold. "Tommy?" Jack called out. "Billy? Sam? Is that you?" The crying stopped suddenly. Then Jack heard a small voice. It was Tommy, his oldest son. "Papa?" Tommy's voice was weak and shaky. "Papa, is that really you?" "Yes, Tommy, it's me," Jack shouted. "What are you doing in there? Why are you locked inside?" "Papa, we can't get out," Tommy cried. "The door is locked. We've been here for so long." Jack looked at the door. There was a big metal lock on it. The lock was held by a heavy chain. Someone had locked his boys inside this cold, dark building. Someone had trapped them like animals. Jack felt anger rush through his body. Who would do this to his children? Who would lock 3 little boys in a building with no heat, no light, no food? "Don't worry, boys," Jack called out. "I'm going to get you out right now." Jack ran to his tool shed and got a heavy axe. He ran back to the storage building as fast as he could through the deep snow. His boys were crying inside. They sounded so scared and weak. Jack raised the axe high above his head. He brought it down hard on the chain that held the lock. The metal made a loud ringing sound. Sparks flew in the darkness. Jack hit the chain, again and again with all his strength. Finally, the chain broke. The lock fell into the snow. Jack threw open the wooden door. The smell that came out of the building was terrible. It smelled like a dirty bathroom. It smelled like fear and sickness. Jack held up his oil lamp and looked inside. What he saw made him feel sick to his stomach. His 3 sons were huddled together in the back corner of the small building. They were sitting on the dirt floor. They had no coats on. They were wearing only their thin nightclothes. Their faces were white from the cold. Their lips were blue. They were shaking so hard they could barely sit up. "My boys," Jack whispered. He felt like he might cry. Tommy, Billy, and Sam looked up at their father. Their eyes were wide with fear. They looked like they had been crying for days. Their hair was dirty. Their clothes were torn. They looked like little ghosts. "Papa," Sam said in a tiny voice, "you came back. I thought you were never coming back." Jack put down the lamp and rushed into the building. He knelt down and pulled all 3 of his sons into his arms. They felt so thin and cold. They were shaking like leaves in the wind. "I'm here now," Jack said softly. "Papa is here. Everything is going to be okay." The boys held on to their father and cried. Jack could feel how cold their little bodies were. Their skin felt like ice. How long had they been trapped in this terrible place? Jack looked around the small building. In one corner was a bucket of water. The water had ice on top of it. Next to the bucket was a small piece of bread. The bread was green with mold. This was all the food and water his boys had. On the floor was an old blanket. It was dirty and torn. The boys had been using it to try to stay warm. But one thin blanket was not enough in this cold weather. "How long have you been in here?" Jack asked gently. Tommy tried to answer, but his teeth were chattering too hard to speak clearly. The 3 days, Papa, he finally said. Maybe 4 days. We lost count. Jack felt his anger grow even stronger. Someone had locked his children in this cold building for days. Someone had left them with almost no food or water. Someone had wanted them to suffer. Who did this to you? Jack asked, but he already knew the answer. Saint Stepmother Clara, Billy said through his tears. She was angry at us. She said we were too much trouble. She said we deserved to be punished. Jack picked up little Sam, who was the coldest of the 3 boys. Sam's whole body was shaking. His skin felt like ice. Jack was afraid his youngest son might be very sick from the cold. We need to get you boys inside the house right now, Jack said. We need to get you warm and fed. Jack helped Tommy and Billy stand up. Their legs were weak from sitting in the cold for so long. They could barely walk. Jack had to support them as they stepped out of the terrible building. The boys blinked in the light from Jack's oil lamp. They had been in darkness for days. Even the dim light from the lamp seemed bright to them. Jack picked up Billy and carried him. Tommy walked slowly beside his father, holding onto Jack's arm. Jack carried Sam in his other arm. The little boy felt as light as a bird. They walked through the snow toward the house. The boys were still crying softly. They held onto their father like they were afraid he might disappear again. It's okay now, Jack kept saying. You're safe now. Papa is going to take care of you. Inside the house, Jack quickly built a fire in the fireplace. He wrapped each of his sons in warm blankets. He made them sit close to the fire to get warm. Jack looked at his boys in the firelight. They looked terrible. Their faces were thin from not eating enough food. Their eyes were red from crying. They had bruises on their arms and legs. Someone had hurt them. Tell me what happened, Jack said gently. Tell me everything. Tommy was the oldest, so he spoke first. His voice was still shaky from the cold. After you left for the cattle drive, Stepmother Clara was nice for only 1 day, Tommy said. Then she changed. She became mean and angry all the time. She said we made too much noise, Billy added. She said we ate too much food. She said we were nothing but trouble. She stopped cooking for us, Tommy continued. She gave us only bread and water. Sometimes she forgot to give us anything at all. Jack felt his hands make fists. He was so angry he could barely control himself. But he had to stay calm for his boys. They needed him to be strong. Then 3 days ago she got very angry, Tommy went on. We don't even know why. We weren't doing anything bad. We were just playing quietly in our room. She came upstairs and screamed at us, Billy said. She said we were the worst children in the world. She said we ruined her life. She made us come outside in our night clothes, Sam said in his small voice. We were cold, but she didn't care. Jack pulled Sam closer to him. His youngest son was still shaking from the cold and fear. She pushed us into that building, Tommy said. She locked the door. She said we could stay there until we learned to behave better. We called for help, Billy said. We called and called, but no one came. We thought no one would ever find us. She came back once, Sam said. She brought us that little piece of bread and the water, but the bread was already old and yucky. She said if we made too much noise, she would never bring us food again, Tommy explained. So we tried to be very quiet, even when we were scared. Jack held his sons close to him. He could not believe what he was hearing. Clara had tortured his children. She had locked them up like prisoners. She had let them almost freeze to death. Where is Clara now? Jack asked. We don't know, Tommy said. After she locked us up, we heard her buggy leave. We haven't seen her since then. Jack looked at his 3 sons. They were safe now, but they had been through something terrible. It would take time for them to feel safe again. It would take time for them to trust people again. But Jack was determined to help them heal. He was determined to make sure Clara could never hurt them again. She had done something unforgivable to his children. The fire was getting warmer now. The boys had stopped shivering so much. Their faces were getting some color back. But Jack could see the fear was still in their eyes. "You're safe now," Jack told them again. "I promise you no one will ever hurt you like this again. Papa will make sure of it." Jack knew he had a lot of work to do. He had to take care of his sons. He had to make sure they got well again. And he had to make sure Clara paid for what she had done to his family. Jack sat by the fire with his 3 sons wrapped in warm blankets. The flames danced in the fireplace and slowly warmed the cold house. But Jack's heart was still cold with anger and sadness for what his boys had been through. Sam had fallen asleep in Jack's arms. The little boy was exhausted from days of fear and cold. Tommy and Billy sat close to their father, still afraid to be too far away from him. They looked at Jack like they could not believe he was really there. "Tell me more about what Clara did," Jack said softly. "I need to know everything so I can protect you." Tommy looked at his younger brother Billy. They both seemed scared to talk about it, but Tommy was the oldest. He knew he had to be brave and tell his father the truth. "It started right after you left, Papa," Tommy began. "The first day, Clara made us a nice breakfast. She smiled and acted normal. But that afternoon something changed." "What happened?" Jack asked gently. "Billy spilled some milk on the kitchen table," Tommy said. "It was just an accident, but Clara got so angry. She screamed at Billy and called him clumsy and stupid." Billy looked down at his hands. "I said I was sorry," he whispered. "But she wouldn't stop yelling at me. She made Billy clean the whole kitchen by himself," Tommy continued. "Even the parts that weren't dirty. When Billy started crying, she got even more angry." Jack felt his jaw get tight with anger, but he tried to keep his voice calm. "What else did she do?" "The next day she said we were eating too much food," Tommy explained. "She said 3 boys ate like pigs and wasted money. She started giving us smaller meals. First she gave us half as much food," Billy added. "Then even less. By the end of the first week she was only giving us bread and water once a day." Jack's hands made fists again. How could Clara starve his children? They were growing boys. They needed good food to be healthy and strong. "We got so hungry, Papa," Sam said, waking up from his short sleep. "My stomach hurt all the time." "Did you try to get food from somewhere else?" Jack asked. "We tried," Tommy said. One time Billy snuck down to the kitchen at night. He was looking for something to eat, but Clara heard him. She got very angry. She locked the kitchen door after that, Billy said. "She kept the key with her all the time. We couldn't get any food unless she gave it to us." Jack shook his head. This was getting worse and worse. Clara had treated his sons like prisoners in their own home. "Tell me about the neighbors," Jack said. "Did anyone try to help you? Did Mrs. Peterson come over?" "Mrs. Peterson came by a few times," Tommy said. "She always asked how we were doing. But Clara would make us stay upstairs when Mrs. Peterson visited. Clara told Mrs. Peterson that we were sick," Billy explained. "She said we had to stay in bed so we wouldn't make other people sick too." "Mrs. Peterson wanted to come upstairs and see us," Tommy said. "But Clara said no. She said the sickness was too catching." Jack remembered Mrs. Peterson's letter. The old woman had been right to worry about the boys. She had tried to help, but Clara was too smart for her. "What about other people from town?" Jack asked. "Did anyone else come to visit?" "The mailman came every few days," Tommy said. "Clara always went outside to meet him. She never let him come close to the house." "One time the preacher from church came by," Billy said. "Clara told him we were all sick with fever. She said he should not come inside or he might get sick, too." Jack realized that Clara had planned everything very carefully. She had made sure no one could find out what she was really doing to his boys. She had lied to everyone who tried to help. "Did she hurt you in other ways?" Jack asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Tommy and Billy looked at each other again. Sam buried his face against Jack's chest. "Sometimes she hit us," Tommy said very quietly. "If we cried about being hungry, or if we made any noise, she would hit us with a wooden spoon. She pulled my hair once," Billy said. "When I asked when you were coming home, she grabbed my hair and pulled it hard. She said I was never allowed to talk about you again." Jack felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. Clara had not just neglected his boys. She had hurt them on purpose. She had been cruel to them when they were helpless and alone. "She said terrible things to us," Tommy continued. "She said we were worthless." She said you didn't really love us. She said you were never coming back. She said you left us because you were tired of taking care of us, Billy added. She said you sent her to get rid of us. Jack pulled his boys closer to him. That is not true, he said firmly. I love you boys more than anything in the world. I would never leave you. I only went on the cattle drive to make money for our family. We knew Clara was lying, Tommy said. But sometimes when we were really scared, we wondered if maybe it was true. Jack's heart broke hearing this. His poor sons had been so scared and alone. They had started to doubt their father's love because of Clara's lies. Tell me about the last few days, Jack said. Tell me about when she locked you in the storage building. Tommy took a deep breath. This was the hardest part to talk about. 3 days ago, Clara was acting very strange, he began. She was packing her clothes in a bag. She was cleaning out her jewelry box. We asked her what she was doing, Billy said. She told us to mind our own business, but we could tell she was getting ready to go somewhere. That afternoon, she came upstairs to our room. Tommy continued. She was carrying a big stick. Her face looked really angry and mean. She said she was tired of pretending to be our mother, Billy said. She said we were nothing but trouble and she was done with us. She made us come downstairs in our night clothes, Tommy said. We asked if we could put on warm clothes, but she said no. She pushed us outside into the snow, Sam said, starting to cry again. It was so cold, Papa. We had no shoes on. Jack held Sam tighter and let him cry. The little boy had been through so much fear and pain. She dragged us to the storage building, Tommy went on. We begged her not to lock us inside. We promised we would be good, but she wouldn't listen. She said we deserved to be punished, Billy said. She said maybe a few days in the cold would teach us to behave better. She threw us inside and slammed the door, Tommy said. We heard the chain and lock. We pounded on the door and called for help, but she just walked away. We were so scared, Sam whispered. It was dark and cold. We couldn't see anything. The first night was the worst, Tommy said. We had no blankets. We had to huddle together to try to stay warm, but we were so cold we couldn't sleep. The next morning, Clara came back, Billy said. She opened the door and threw in that old blanket and the bucket of water. She also gave us that little piece of bread. We begged her to let us out, Tommy said. We said we were sorry for whatever we did wrong, but she just laughed at us. She said she was going away for a while, Billy explained. She said if we were very quiet and didn't cause trouble, she might let us out when she got back. But we didn't know when she was coming back, Sam said. We thought maybe never. Jack felt tears in his own eyes now. His brave little sons had been trapped in that terrible place, thinking they might die there. They had been cold and hungry, and scared with no one to help them. How did you survive? Jack asked. We took turns drinking the water, Tommy said. We made it last as long as we could, and we shared the tiny piece of bread even though it was moldy. We told each other stories to stay brave, Billy said. We talked about when you would come home. We said you would find us and save us. I kept telling Sam that Papa would come back, Tommy said. Even when I was scared that maybe Clara was right, I told Sam not to worry. And you were right, Jack said. Papa did come back, and I found you, and I will never let anyone hurt you again. The three boys looked up at their father. For the first time since Jack had found them, they started to look a little bit hopeful. They were beginning to believe that their terrible time was over. But Jack knew they had a long way to go before they would feel safe again. Clara had hurt them not just in their bodies, but in their hearts and minds too. It would take time and love to help them heal. Jack also knew that Clara was still out there somewhere. She might come back. She might try to hurt his boys again. Jack had to make sure that never happened. Where do you think Clara went? Jack asked. She talked about visiting her sister, Tommy said. I heard her say the name Cheyenne a few times. Jack nodded. Cheyenne was a big city about 50 miles away. If Clara had gone there, it would explain why her buggy was still in the barn. She might have taken the train from town. Boys, I want you to know something, Jack said, looking at each of his sons. What Clara did to you was very wrong. No adult should ever treat children this way. It was not your fault. You did nothing to deserve this. The boys listened carefully to their father's words. "From now on, I will never leave you alone with someone who might hurt you," Jack promised. "And I will make sure Clara can never come back to hurt you again." Jack looked out the window. The sun was starting to come up. It had been a long, terrible night. But his boys were safe now. That was the most important thing. Now Jack had to decide what to do about Clara. She had committed a serious crime against his children. She could not be allowed to get away with it. The next morning, Jack made a big breakfast for his sons. He cooked eggs, bacon, and pancakes. The boys ate slowly at first. Their stomachs were not used to having so much food after days of being hungry. Jack watched his sons eat and felt both happy and sad. Happy because they were safe with him now. Sad because he could see how thin they had become. Clara had hurt them badly. After breakfast, Jack helped the boys take warm baths. He washed their dirty hair and put clean clothes on them. He looked at the bruises on their arms and legs. Some were old and yellow, some were newer and still purple. Each bruise made Jack more angry at Clara. "Papa, are you going to send us away?" little Sam asked as Jack combed his clean hair. "What? No, Sam. Why would you think that?" Jack said, surprised. "Clara said all fathers get tired of their children," Sam explained. "She said that's why you went on the cattle drive, to get away from us." Jack knelt down so he could look Sam in the eyes. "Sam, that is not true. I went on the cattle drive to earn money for our family. I thought about you boys every single day. I missed you so much it made my heart hurt." "Really?" Sam asked. "Really," Jack said. "I love you and Tommy and Billy more than anything in the whole world. I will never send you away. This is your home. I am your papa forever." Sam smiled for the first time since Jack had found him. It was a small smile, but it made Jack feel better. After the boys were clean and dressed, Jack tucked them into their beds for a nap. They were still very tired from their terrible experience. Jack sat in a chair and watched them sleep. They looked so peaceful now, so different from how they looked when he found them in that cold building. While his sons slept, Jack went outside to do his morning chores. He fed the animals and milked the cows. All the time he was thinking about Clara. Where was she now? When would she come back? What would he say to her when she did? Jack also thought about what he should do. Should he tell the sheriff what Clara had done? Should he have her arrested? Or should he just make her leave and never come back? Around noon, Jack heard the sound of a horse and buggy coming down the road to his ranch. He looked out the window and saw a familiar buggy. It was not Clara's buggy. This one belonged to Mr. Henderson from town. But Clara was sitting in the passenger seat. Jack felt his anger rise up in his chest like fire. Clara had come back. She looked calm and normal, like nothing had happened, like she had not locked 3 children in a cold building and left them to suffer. Jack walked out to the front yard to meet the buggy. Mr. Henderson stopped the horses and helped Clara down. She was wearing her best dress and coat. Her hair was neat and pretty. She looked like she had been having a nice time somewhere. "Thank you for the ride, Mr. Henderson," Clara said sweetly. "My husband is home from his cattle drive, so he can take me home from here." Mr. Henderson tipped his hat to Jack. "Good to see you back safe, Jack," he said. "Clara says she was visiting her sister in Cheyenne while you were away." "Yes," Jack said carefully. "Thank you for bringing her home." Mr. Henderson drove away, leaving Jack and Clara alone in the yard. Clara smiled at Jack like nothing was wrong. "Hello, darling," Clara said. "You're home early. I wasn't expecting you for another week." Jack stared at Clara. She was acting like everything was normal, like she was a loving wife welcoming her husband home. It made Jack feel sick. "Where are my sons, Clara?" Jack asked in a quiet, dangerous voice. "Your sons?" Clara said, still smiling. "They're probably playing somewhere. You know how boys are." "No, Clara." "Where are my sons?" Jack asked again. "Where did you put them?" Clara's smile got a little smaller. "I don't know what you mean, Jack. The boys are fine. They've been fine while you were away." Jack stepped closer to Clara. His hands were closed in fists. "I found them, Clara. I found them locked in the storage building, half frozen to death, starving, scared out of their minds. Clara's smile disappeared completely. For just a moment, Jack saw the real Clara. Her eyes went cold and mean, but then she put the fake smile back on her face. "Oh, that," she said, laughing a little. "The boys were being very bad while you were gone, Jack. They needed to be punished. I was just trying to teach them better behavior." "You locked 3 children in a cold building for days," Jack shouted. "You gave them no food, no warm clothes, no heat. You could have killed them." "I was disciplining them," Clara said calmly. "Children need strong discipline, or they grow up to be wild and useless. I was doing what was best for them." Jack could not believe what he was hearing. Clara really thought what she had done was okay. She thought torturing children was just normal punishment. "You nearly let my sons freeze to death," Jack said. "You starved them. You beat them. You locked them up like animals." "I did what I had to do," Clara said. Her voice was getting colder now. "Those boys are spoiled and difficult. They don't listen. They don't show respect. Someone had to teach them how to behave properly." "They are children," Jack yelled. "They are just little. Boys! Tommy is 12, Billy is 9, and Sam is only 6 years old." "Old enough to learn right from wrong," Clara said. "Old enough to show respect to their elders. But they refused to do what I told them." Jack realized that Clara was not sorry for what she had done. She was not ashamed. She thought she was right. This made her even more dangerous. "Pack your things and leave," Jack said. "I want you off my property right now." "I will not," Clara said. Her voice was sharp now. "I am your wife. This is my home too. You cannot just order me to leave." "You lost the right to call this your home when you tortured my children," Jack said. "I am legally your wife," Clara said. "I have rights. You cannot just throw me out because you don't like how I discipline the children." Jack realized that Clara was not going to leave quietly. She was going to fight him. She thought she could win because she was his legal wife. "Let me tell you something, Clara," Jack said. "I know what you really are now. I know you don't love my boys. I know you married me just to get my money and my land." "That's not true," Clara said, but her eyes showed that Jack was right. "I found your letter," Jack continued. "The one you were writing to your sister. The one where you said you made a mistake marrying me. The one where you said you couldn't stand my children." Clara's face went white. She had forgotten about that letter. "You were planning to leave anyway," Jack said. "You were just trying to figure out how to get rid of my boys first." "Those boys are nothing but trouble," Clara said angrily. "They eat too much, they cost too much money, they make too much noise, they ruined my life." "Then you should be happy to leave," Jack said. "Go back to your sister in Cheyenne, find some other man to marry, but you will never hurt my sons again." "I'm not going anywhere," Clara said. "This ranch is worth a lot of money. Half of it belongs to me now, I'm not giving that up." Jack realized that Clara had never loved him or his boys. She had only married him for his property. She saw his sons as problems that needed to be gotten rid of. "I'll give you one more chance," Jack said. "Pack your things and leave now. If you do, I won't have you arrested for what you did to my boys." "Arrested?" Clara laughed. "For disciplining children? No sheriff is going to arrest a woman for punishing bad children, especially when their father was not even here to control them. You think any sheriff would say it's okay to lock children in a freezing building for days?" Jack asked. "I think any sheriff would say that wives have the right to discipline their husband's children when he's not around," Clara said. "Especially difficult children who don't mind and cause trouble." Jack saw that Clara really believed she could get away with what she had done. She thought people would take her side. She thought they would blame his sons for being bad children. "You're wrong, Clara," Jack said. "People in this town know my boys. They know Tommy, Billy, and Sam are good children. They will not believe your lies." "We'll see about that," Clara said. "I think you'll find that people will believe a respectable wife over 3 spoiled children who probably made up stories to get their stepmother in trouble." Jack felt his anger growing stronger. Clara was going to try to make people think his sons were lying. She was going to try to make them think she was the victim. "Get in the house, Clara," Jack said. "We're going to finish this conversation inside." "Fine," Clara said. But I'm not changing my mind, I'm not leaving, and I'm not apologizing for doing what needed to be done. They walked toward the house. Jack wondered if his sons were still sleeping upstairs. He hoped they would not hear Clara's voice and get scared. As they reached the front door, Clara turned to Jack with a cruel smile. You know, Jack, she said, maybe it would be better for everyone if you just sent those boys to an orphanage. Then we could be happy together, just the two of us. Jack stopped walking. He stared at Clara with complete shock. Even after everything that had happened, she was still trying to get rid of his sons. You really are evil, Jack said quietly. I'm practical, Clara said. Those boys will always be a problem. They will always cost money and cause trouble. We would be much better off without them. Jack realized that there was no talking to Clara. She would never change. She would never accept his sons. She would always see them as problems to be gotten rid of, and if she stayed, she would always be dangerous to them. Jack made his decision. He was done trying to reason with Clara. It was time to take action to protect his family. Jack and Clara went inside the house. Jack made sure to close the door quietly. He did not want to wake his sons upstairs. They needed their rest, and they did not need to hear what was about to happen. Clara sat down in the living room like she owned the place. She smoothed her dress and fixed her hair. She acted like she was getting ready for a normal conversation with her husband. Now, Jack, Clara said in a sweet voice, let's be reasonable about this. I know you're upset about the boys, but you weren't here. You don't understand how difficult they were. I understand perfectly, Jack said. He did not sit down. He stood looking down at Clara. You tortured my children. You almost killed them. I disciplined them, Clara said again. Maybe I was a little harsh, but they gave me no choice. They were wild and rude. Jack realized that Clara would never admit she had done anything wrong. In her mind, she was always right. Everyone else was always wrong. Clara, I need to tell you something, Jack said. While I was on the cattle drive, I got a letter from Mrs. Peterson. She was worried about the boys. Clara's face changed a little. What did that old woman say? She said she hadn't seen the boys playing outside for days. She said your buggy was gone from the ranch a lot. She was worried about who was watching my sons when you left. Mrs. Peterson should mind her own business, Clara said angrily. After I got her letter, I started asking questions, Jack continued. I sent letters to people in town. I asked them to check on my family. This was not completely true. Jack had been worried, but he had not sent many letters. However, he wanted to see how Clara would react. Clara looked nervous now. What kind of questions? I asked about you, Clara. I asked about your life before you married me. I wanted to make sure my boys were safe with you. Clara stood up from her chair. You had no right to investigate me. I am your wife. And you had no right to hurt my children, Jack said loudly. Jack went to his desk and pulled out some papers. He had actually received these papers just before leaving on the cattle drive, but he had not had time to read them carefully. Now he was glad he had brought them home. Do you know what I found out about you, Clara? Jack asked, holding up the papers. Clara's face went white. I don't know what you mean. I found out this is not your first marriage to a widower with children, Jack said. Clara sat back down heavily. She looked like someone had hit her. I found out you were married to Robert Mills in Colorado 2 years before you married me, Jack continued. Robert had 2 young sons. His wife had died just like mine did. That has nothing to do with this, Clara said, but her voice was shaky now. Robert's sons disappeared one winter, Jack said, reading from the papers. Robert reported them missing, but they were never found. Then you left Robert and came here to Wyoming. Those boys ran away, Clara said quickly. They were unhappy, they didn't like me. So they ran away to find relatives in another state. Really? Jack asked. Because I also found out about your first marriage. To William Turner in Kansas. He was also a widower with children. His daughter disappeared too. Then you left William and went to Colorado. Clara jumped up from her chair. You're lying. You're making this up. I have letters from both men, Jack said, showing her more papers. They both want to know what happened to their children. They both think you know more than you told them. Clara's hands were shaking now. She looked scared for the first time since Jack had known her. I don't know what happened to those children, she said. It's not my fault they didn't like me and ran away. 3 different families, Jack said slowly. 3 different sets of children who all disappeared after you married their fathers. That seems like a very strange coincidence, doesn't it, Clara? It's not my fault, Clara screamed. Children are difficult. They don't appreciate what people do for them. Jack realized that Clara had probably done terrible things to other children before his sons. Maybe she had even killed children. The thought made him feel sick. I think the sheriff will be very interested in these letters, Jack said. You can't prove anything, Clara said, but she sounded scared. Maybe not about the other children, Jack said. But I can prove what you did to my boys. I have 3 witnesses who will tell everyone exactly what you did to them. No one will believe children over an adult, Clara said. Mrs. Peterson will believe them, Jack said. She knows my boys. She knows they don't lie, and she already suspected something was wrong. One old woman, Clara said. The doctor will believe them too, Jack continued. When he sees the bruises you gave them, when he sees how thin and sick you made them. Clara was starting to look panicked now. Those bruises could have come from anywhere. Boys get bruises from playing. Not bruises like these, Jack said. And not with the story that goes with them. 3 boys all telling the same story about being locked up and starved. I tell you, no one will believe them, Clara shouted. The preacher will believe them, Jack said. When he finds out you lied to him about them being sick, when he finds out you used his kindness to hide your cruelty. Clara sat down again and put her head in her hands. She was starting to understand that she was in serious trouble. What do you want, Jack? She asked quietly. I want you to confess to what you did, Jack said. I want you to tell the sheriff the truth about how you treated my sons. I won't do that, Clara said. I won't ruin my reputation for some spoiled children. Then I'll tell the sheriff myself, Jack said, and I'll give him these letters about the other missing children too. Clara looked up at Jack with hate in her eyes. You would really destroy your own wife? You are not my wife anymore, Jack said. A real wife would love my children. A real wife would protect them when I was away. You are just a woman who tricked me into marrying her. I am legally your wife, Clara said. Not for much longer, Jack said. I'm going to get our marriage annulled. I'm going to tell the judge that you lied to me about who you really were. You can't prove I lied about anything. I can prove you didn't tell me about your other marriages, Jack said. I can prove you didn't tell me about the missing children. That's enough lies to end our marriage. Clara stood up and started walking around the room. She was thinking hard, trying to find a way out of her trouble. What if I just leave? She asked. What if I pack my things and go away? You never have to see me again. It's too late for that, Jack said. You committed crimes against my children. You have to face justice for what you did. Please, Jack, Clara said, and for the first time she sounded like she was begging. I'll go away forever. You'll never have to worry about me again. What about the next family? Jack asked. What about the next widower with children that you marry? Will you torture his children too? Clara did not answer, but Jack could see in her eyes that she would do the same thing again if she got the chance. I can't let you go free to hurt other children, Jack said. I have to make sure you can never do this again. Just then, Jack heard a sound from upstairs. It sounded like one of his sons was awake. Jack hoped the boy had not heard Clara's voice. Papa? It was Tommy calling from upstairs. Is everything okay? Everything is fine, Tommy, Jack called back. Go back to sleep. But Tommy came down the stairs anyway. When he saw Clara sitting in the living room, he stopped and stared. His face went white with fear. Tommy, Clara said with a fake smile. Hello, dear. Did you miss your stepmother while I was away? Tommy moved closer to his father. He looked terrified of Clara. I see you've been telling lies about me to your father, Clara said to Tommy. That's very naughty, Tommy. I may have to punish you. Again. Tommy grabbed onto Jack's arm. The boy was shaking with fear. You will never punish my son again, Jack said to Clara. You will never even speak to him again. We'll see about that, Clara said. Jack had heard enough. He went to his desk and got paper and a pen. He started writing a letter. What are you doing? Clara asked. I'm writing a letter to the sheriff, Jack said. I'm asking him to come here right away. I'm going to have you arrested for child abuse and endangerment. You can't do this to me, Clara screamed. Watch me, Jack said and kept writing. Clara ran to Jack and tried to grab the letter from him, but Jack was much stronger than she was. He pushed her away and finished writing. Tommy, Jack said to his son, I want you to take this letter to town. Give it to Sheriff Johnson. Tell him it's very important. I don't want to leave you alone with her, Papa, Tommy said, looking scared. Don't worry, son. I can handle Clara. Just take the letter and come right back. Tommy took the letter and ran out of the house. Clara watched him go with anger in her eyes. You just made a big mistake, Jack, Clara said. This is going to ruin both of us. People will think you can't control your own family. I don't care what people think, Jack said. I only care about protecting my sons. Clara sat down and glared at Jack. You'll be sorry for this, I promise you that. The only thing I'm sorry about, Jack said, is that I ever trusted you with my children. Now all Jack could do was wait for the sheriff to come and hope that justice would finally be done for what Clara had put his family through. 2 hours later, Sheriff Johnson arrived at Jack's ranch with Tommy. The sheriff was a big, serious man with gray hair and kind eyes. Jack had known him for many years. The sheriff was a fair man who cared about protecting people, especially children. Hello, Jack, Sheriff Johnson said. I got your letter. This is a very serious matter. Yes, it is, Jack said. Thank you for coming so quickly. Clara was still sitting in the living room. When she saw the sheriff, she put on her sweetest smile and stood up to greet him. Hello, Sheriff Johnson, Clara said in her most polite voice. What brings you out here today? I'm here about some very serious charges against you, Mrs. Morrison, the sheriff said. His voice was not friendly. Charges? Clara said, acting surprised. What kind of charges? I haven't done anything wrong. Jack says you locked his 3 sons in a storage building for several days, the sheriff said. He says you gave them almost no food or water. He says you beat them and threatened them. That is completely untrue, Clara said, still smiling. I would never hurt children. Jack's sons are just angry with me because I tried to discipline them while he was away. Sheriff Johnson looked at Jack. Where are the boys now? Tommy is here, Jack said, pointing to his oldest son. Billy and Sam are still sleeping upstairs. They were very weak when I found them. I'd like to speak with all 3 boys, the sheriff said. Of course, Jack said. Tommy, go wake your brothers and bring them down here. When the 3 boys came downstairs, Sheriff Johnson could see right away that something bad had happened to them. They were too thin. They moved slowly, like old men instead of young boys. They stayed very close to their father and looked scared. Hello, boys, the sheriff said gently. I need to ask you some questions about what happened while your father was away. The boys looked at Clara, then at their father. They were still afraid of Clara, even with the sheriff there. It's okay, Jack told his sons. Tell Sheriff Johnson the truth. Clara cannot hurt you anymore. Tommy spoke first because he was the oldest. He told the sheriff everything that had happened, how Clara had stopped feeding them properly, how she had hit them and said mean things to them, how she had locked them in the cold storage building for days. Billy and Sam added their own parts. Of the story, they told about being scared and cold and hungry. They told about thinking they might die in that terrible place. Sheriff Johnson listened to everything the boys said. He asked them questions to make sure they were telling the truth. But Jack could see that the sheriff believed his sons completely. Mrs. Morrison? The sheriff said to Clara. These are very serious accusations. What do you have to say about them? The boys are lying, Clara said. They are making up stories because they don't like me. Children do that sometimes when they don't want to get in trouble. All 3 boys are telling the same story, the sheriff said. They remember the same details. That doesn't sound like lying to me. Children can make up stories together, Clara said, especially when they want to get someone in trouble. Sheriff Johnson looked at the boys again. He could see the fear in their eyes when they looked at Clara. He could see how they stayed close to their father for protection. I need to see this. Storage building, the sheriff said. Jack led everyone outside to the small building behind the house. When the sheriff opened the door, the terrible smell was still there. The old bucket was still inside. The moldy bread was still on the floor. Sheriff Johnson looked around the small, dark space. He saw how cold it was. He saw that there were no windows, no heat, no comfort at all. You locked 3 children in here? The sheriff asked Clara. I put them there for a short time to think about their behavior, Clara said. It was just for a few hours. The boys say it was 3 days, the sheriff said. They're exaggerating, Clara said. Children always make things sound worse than they really were. But Sheriff Johnson had seen enough. He could tell that the boys were telling the truth. He could see the evidence of what Clara had done. Clara Morrison, the sheriff said, I am arresting you for child abuse and endangerment. You can't arrest me, Clara said, her fake sweetness disappearing. I am a respectable married woman. I was just disciplining my husband's children. What you did was not discipline, the sheriff said firmly. What you did was cruelty, and it's against the law. The sheriff put handcuffs on Clara's wrists. She screamed and fought against him, but he was much stronger than she was. This is not over, Jack, Clara shouted as the sheriff led her to his wagon. I'll find a way to get back at you and those horrible boys. Ma'am, I suggest you stop making threats, the sheriff said. You're in enough trouble already. As the sheriff's wagon drove away with Clara inside, Jack felt like a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. His sons were safe now. Clara could never hurt them again. But Jack knew that his boys would need time to get better. They had been through something terrible. Their bodies were weak from not eating enough food. Their hearts were hurt from being scared and alone. Their minds were confused from Clara's lies and cruelty. The next day, Jack took his sons to see Dr. Williams in town. The doctor was shocked when he saw how thin and weak the boys were. He examined them carefully and found all the bruises Clara had given them. These boys have been badly mistreated, Dr. Williams told Jack. They're going to need good food, lots of rest, and plenty of love to get better. They'll have all of that, Jack promised. Dr. Williams gave Jack medicine to help the boys get stronger. He also gave Jack special instructions about what foods to give them and how much rest they needed. Over the next few weeks, Jack devoted all of his time to taking care of his sons. He cooked special meals for them to help them gain weight. He read them stories and played games with them. He made sure they knew they were safe and loved. But Jack realized he needed help. Taking care of 3 boys who had been hurt so badly was a big job. He needed someone who could help them heal from what Clara had done to them. Jack remembered Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman who lived in town. She had raised 6 children of her own and had helped many other families over the years. She was known for being kind and gentle with children who had been hurt or scared. Jack went to see Mrs. Henderson and told her about what had happened to his sons. Mrs. Henderson was horrified by Clara's cruelty, but she was eager to help. Those poor boys, Mrs. Henderson said. Of course I'll help you take care of them. Children who have been through something like that need special attention. Mrs. Henderson came to live at Jack's ranch. She was like a grandmother to Tommy, Billy, and Sam. She cooked good meals for them and helped them with their lessons. She sang to them when they had bad dreams. She hugged them when they were scared. Most importantly, Mrs. Henderson helped the boys learn to trust women again. After what Clara had done to them, the boys were afraid of all women. But Mrs. Henderson was so kind and patient that slowly, the boys began to feel safe with her. Jack also made a big decision about his work. He had been thinking about it ever since he found his sons in that terrible building. He realized that he could never leave his boys alone for long periods of time again. They needed their father to be close to them. Jack sold his cattle business to another rancher. Instead of driving cattle across many states, Jack decided to focus on farming his own land. He planted crops and raised animals on his ranch. This way, he could work close to home and always be there for his sons. The boys got stronger every day. They gained weight and their bruises healed. They started playing outside again and laughing at Jack's jokes. They began to look like normal, healthy children instead of scared, hurt ones. But healing their hearts took longer than healing their bodies. For months, the boys had nightmares about being locked in that cold, dark building. They jumped at loud noises. They got scared when Jack had to go to town, even for just a few hours. Tommy, Billy, and Sam also had trouble believing that they were really safe. They kept expecting something bad to happen again. They kept waiting for someone else to hurt them or send them away. Jack and Mrs. Henderson worked together to help the boys feel secure. They made sure the boys knew that their home was safe. They promised the boys over and over that no one would ever hurt them again. Meanwhile, Clara was put on trial for what she had done. The whole town was shocked when they learned about how she had treated Jack's sons. Many people felt guilty because they had not realized what was happening. Mrs. Peterson testified at the trial. She told about how worried she had been when she stopped seeing the boys. She told about Clara's lies and excuses. Dr. Williams also testified. He described the boys' injuries and explained how serious their condition had been when Jack brought them to him. Most importantly, Tommy testified at the trial. Even though he was just 12 years old, he was brave enough to tell the judge and jury exactly what Clara had done to him and his brothers. The jury found Clara guilty of child abuse and endangerment. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in prison. He also made sure that Clara could never legally adopt or care for children again. As the months passed, Jack's sons continued to heal. They started to smile more and worry less. They began to trust that their father would always protect them and that Mrs. Henderson would always be kind to them. Jack also learned important lessons from what had happened. 1 year later, it was winter again. Snow covered the ground around Jack's ranch, just like it had the night he came home early from the cattle drive. But this winter was completely different from that terrible time. Jack sat by the warm fireplace, in his living room, watching his 3 sons play a game on the floor. Tommy was now 13 years old and had grown tall and strong. Billy was 10 and full of energy and laughter again. Little Sam was 7 and asked even more questions than before. The boys looked healthy and happy. Their cheeks were round and rosy from good food and outdoor play. Their eyes sparkled with joy instead of fear. They laughed loudly and played without worry. This was how children should look, Jack thought to himself. Mrs. Henderson sat in her rocking chair nearby, knitting a warm sweater for Sam. She had become like a beloved grandmother to the boys. They trusted her completely and loved her gentle ways. She had helped heal their hearts with patience and kindness. "Papa," Sam said, looking up from the game, "tell us again about the night you found us." Jack was surprised by this request. For months after their rescue, the boys had not wanted to talk about that terrible time. It had been too scary and painful to remember. But now, a year later, they seemed ready to hear the story. "Are you sure you want to hear it, Sam?" Jack asked gently. "Yes," Tommy said. "We want to remember how brave you were when you saved us." "And how brave you boys were," Jack added. "You survived something very difficult. You took care of each other. You never gave up hope that I would come home." Jack began to tell the story of that cold winter night. He told about riding home through the snow and finding the house dark and empty. He told about hearing their voices from the storage building and breaking down the door to free them. As Jack told the story, he realized that his sons were not scared anymore when they heard it. Instead, they looked proud. Proud that they had been strong enough to survive. Proud that their father had loved them enough to save them. "Clara was wrong about us, wasn't she, Papa?" Billy said. "We weren't bad children." "No, Billy," Jack said firmly. "You were never bad children. Clara was a sick and cruel person. What she did to you was wrong. It was never your fault." This was something Jack had told his sons many times over the past year. Clara had tried to make them believe they deserved to be hurt and punished, but Jack and Mrs. Henderson had worked hard to help the boys understand the truth. "Where is Clara now?" Tommy asked. "She is still in prison," Jack said. "She will be there for several more years, and after that she will never be allowed to care for children again." "Good," Sam said simply. "She was mean to us." Jack was glad that his sons were no longer afraid to say that Clara had been mean to them. For a long time, they had been too scared to speak badly about any adult, even one who had hurt them. Mrs. Henderson looked up from her knitting. "Boys, why don't you help me make some hot chocolate?" she suggested. "It's getting cold outside." The three boys jumped up eagerly and followed Mrs. Henderson to the kitchen. Jack could hear them chattering and laughing as they helped her prepare the warm drink. Jack thought about how much had changed in the past year. His farming operation was doing very well. He grew corn and wheat and raised cattle on his own land. He made good money, and he never had to travel far from home. The boys were doing well in school again. For months after their rescue, they had trouble concentrating on their lessons. The fear and trauma had made it hard for them to focus on learning. But slowly, with Mrs. Henderson's help, they had caught up with their studies. Tommy was especially good at mathematics and wanted to learn about engineering. Billy loved reading adventure stories and wanted to travel the world someday. Sam was fascinated by animals and wanted to become a veterinarian like Dr. Williams. Jack was proud of all three of his sons. They had not let Clara's cruelty destroy their dreams or their spirits. They were growing into good, strong young men. The people of Silver Creek had been wonderful to Jack's family throughout the difficult time. When the town learned what had happened to the boys, everyone wanted to help. Neighbors brought food and offered to help with farm work. The schoolteacher gave the boys extra help with their lessons. The preacher visited regularly to make sure they were healing well. Mrs. Peterson, the neighbor who had first written to Jack about her concerns, had become a good friend to the family. She often came over to visit with Mrs. Henderson and check on the boys. She felt bad that she had not been able to help sooner, but Jack always told her that her letter had been very important. "If you hadn't written to me, I might not have been as worried," Jack told her. "I might not have come home early from the cattle drive. Your letter helped save my boys." Dr. Williams also checked on the boys regularly. He was amazed at how well they had recovered from their ordeal. Their bodies were strong and healthy again, their minds were clear and active. Most importantly, their ability to trust and love had been restored. "Children are remarkable," Dr. Williams told Jack. "They can heal from terrible things if they have enough love and care. Your boys are proof of that." Jack had also learned important things about himself over the past year. He had learned that being a father was the most important job he would ever have. He had learned that protecting his children was worth any sacrifice. Jack had decided he would never marry again. Not because he was afraid of women, but because he wanted to focus all of his attention on raising his sons. They had been through enough changes and disruptions. They needed stability and consistency now. Mrs. Henderson provided the gentle female influence the boys needed without any of the complications of Jack having a new wife. She loved the boys like her own grandchildren, and they felt completely safe with her. The boys came back from the kitchen carrying mugs of hot chocolate. They sat down by the fire again and warmed their hands on the hot cups. "Papa," Tommy said, thoughtfully, "I'm glad Clara is gone, but I'm also glad she happened to us." Jack was surprised by this statement. "What do you mean, Tommy?" "Well, if Clara had never married you, we might never have learned how strong we are," Tommy explained. "We learned that we can survive hard things. We learned that we can take care of each other. We learned how much you love us." Billy nodded, in agreement. "And we learned that there are good people who will help us like Mrs. Henderson and Dr. Williams and Sheriff Johnson. We learned that bad things don't last forever," Sam added. "When we were locked up, we thought it would never, but Papa came home and saved us. Now we're happy again." Jack felt tears in his eyes as he listened to his sons. They had taken something terrible and found good lessons in it. They had grown stronger instead of weaker from their experience. "You boys are very wise," Jack said. "You're right that good can come from bad experiences, but I still wish Clara had never hurt you." "We know, Papa," Tommy said. But we're okay now. We're better than okay. We're happy. Mrs. Henderson came back into the living room and sat down in her chair. She smiled at Jack and the boys gathered around the fire. "This is a good family," she said quietly. "A strong family. A loving family." Jack looked around at his sons and at Mrs. Henderson, who had become part of their family too. The fireplace crackled warmly. Snow fell peacefully outside the windows. The house was full of love and safety and contentment. A year ago, Jack had been a lone cowboy riding home through a terrible storm. He had found his children in the most awful circumstances imaginable. He had thought his family was broken beyond repair. But now, Jack realized that his family had not been broken. It had been tested, and it had proven to be stronger than he had ever known. His sons had survived because they loved each other and never gave up hope. Jack had saved them because his love for them was stronger than any distance or danger. Together they had built a new life that was better and happier than anything they had known before. "I love you boys," Jack said, looking at each of his sons. "We love you too, Papa," they all said together. Outside, the wind blew gently through the trees. But inside Jack's house, all was warm and peaceful and safe. The lone cowboy had come home for good, and he had brought his family back together, again, stronger than ever before. As the evening grew late, Jack helped his sons get ready for bed. They brushed their teeth and put on their warm pajamas. Jack tucked each boy into his comfortable bed in their cozy bedrooms. "Papa," Sam said sleepily, "will you always be here when we wake up?" "Always," Jack promised. "I will always be here to take care of you." "Even when we grow up?" Billy asked. "Even when you grow up," Jack said. "I will always be your papa, and you will always be my sons. Nothing will ever change that." "Good," Tommy said with a yawn. "Good night, Papa." "Good night, boys," Jack said. "Sweet dreams." Jack turned off the oil lamp and quietly left his sons' rooms. They were safe and loved and happy. They were home where they belonged. And tomorrow would be another good day for the Morrison family. Jack went back downstairs to sit by the dying fire. Mrs. Henderson had gone to her own room to read before sleep. The house was quiet and peaceful. Jack thought about the year that had passed. It had been a year of healing and learning and growing. It had been a year of discovering how strong love could be when it was tested by hardship. Most of all, it had been a year of building something new and better from the ashes of something that had been broken.